Coming up ahead in this episode of Xtalks Spotlight.
It wasn't too long before Dr. Harrison started noticing that there really were a lot of similarities in the research space, falling kind of under that penumbra of MASH research. So disease states such as obesity and hyperlipidemia, cardiovascular disease. And so Summit's long-term strategies have started to take on those research opportunities. We think that we can really be effective in that space with the sites. And certainly our sites have access to that patient population since it is part of that connected penumbra of MASH.
Hello, and welcome to Xtalks Spotlight, illuminating insights from subject matter experts and industry thought leaders. I'm Sonia Hunt. In this episode, we are asking the question, how is Dr. Stephen Harrison's legacy continuing to accelerate MASH clinical research?
During his illustrious 30-year career, Dr. Harrison pioneered the field of liver research and worked tirelessly in the pursuit of finding new treatment options and cures for metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis and metabolic dysfunction-associated steatotic liver disease. Dr. Harrison revolutionized hepatology and the greater research community, and he was instrumental in the achievement of the first FDA-approved drug to treat patients with MASH and MASLD. In this Xtalks Spotlight edition, I sat down with Gail Hinkson, CEO and co-founder of Summit Clinical Research. Together, we discussed how Summit continues to celebrate Dr. Harrison's legacy and how they are firmly committed to achieving his vision of enhancing the way clinical trials are executed for the future of the industry. Thank you for taking the time in this Spotlight interview, Gail.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So to start off, could you tell us a little bit about the early days of Summit Clinical Research and what motivated you and Dr. Harrison to build the company?
Dr. Harrison and I met about 16 years ago. He was working as a military researcher at Brooke Army Medical Center, and I was working with a 501c3 that was dedicated to research and education with the military. And we had always envisioned building a research center that was dedicated to fatty liver disease. So in 2015, we started to build that research center. It is now called Pinnacle Clinical Research. And we found that we were really effective in identifying patients that were suitable for the trials and helping sponsors effectively enroll their study. Sponsors started to ask us whether we could help other sites be effective with strategies, and that really became an impetus for us helping to build Summit Clinical Research. So in 2018, Dr. Stephen Harrison and I started Summit Clinical Research to help other sites be effective in the fatty liver disease space for clinical trials.
And what were your long-term goals for Summit?
Our long-term goals have really always centered around being excellent in fatty liver research. We know that we created a model that is effective. Our first trial that we did was with 15 sites enrolling 175 patients, and our objective was to do that in under a year, and we actually exceeded that. And so we knew that the method that we had built was viable. In fact, we've replicated it across all of the programs that we've really done by and large. And so our long-term goals really were to continue that vision, helping to support sites be effective in the clinical trials, and help sponsors with scientific strategy and insights based on the experiences that we've had in the research space. It wasn't too long before Dr. Harrison started noticing that there really were a lot of similarities in the research space, falling kind of under that penumbra of MASH research. So disease states such as obesity and hyperlipidemia, cardiovascular disease. And so Summit's long-term strategies have started to take on those research opportunities. We think that we can really be effective in that space with the sites. And certainly our sites have access to that patient population since it is part of that connected penumbra of MASH disease state. And then Dr. Harrison had also found a synergy between MASH research and Alzheimer's research, both having some metabolic association. And so Summit's long-term strategy has also included expanding into Alzheimer's disease research. And then lastly, one of our objectives for long-term growth is bringing our scientific insights and our operational insights into building a medical education and medical communications division within Summit.
I'm sure it's been a significant time of adjustment in the years since Dr. Harrison's passing. Could you share what has changed during this period?
Dr. Harrison was a larger-than-life individual who was first and foremost an educator and a sharer of information and insights. And he really contributed, obviously, to MASH research through Pinnacle and then subsequently through Summit. But bigger than that, he contributed to the entire field. And his role within Summit was to be that thought leader, that insight driver for Summit and for the field, where my role has always been to operate the organization. In the planning stage of Summit, we had looked at ways that we could build a contingency plan for someday for Dr. Harrison to retire. We had no idea that we would have to put that contingency plan into place, obviously. But in 2022, we had brought in Dr. Mazen Noureddin as our chief scientific officer and someday successor for Dr. Harrison. Following Dr. Harrison's passing, obviously, Dr. Noureddin has stepped into that role, more fulfilled the scientific and clinical insights related to the disease states that we're working in. In addition, we've also brought in Dr. Naeem Al-Khouri as our chief academic officer to drive that scientific insight, that medical communication element that we're building within Summit. We've also broadened our KOL bench to include KOLs and thought leaders in the Alzheimer's space, in the obesity space, and other areas that we're looking to expand into.
And to wrap up, how are you continuing to honor your shared goals for Summit Clinical Research?
I had that privilege of working with Dr. Harrison for 16 years, and during that time, I became to understand what was most important to him, and he in turn became with an understanding of what was most important to me, and that allowed us to build this shared vision of Summit. And I know that despite his passing, we intend to fulfill the obligations that we've set forward for bringing premier service to MASH research, doing research better in this disease state that is complicated and has a number of intricacies and is continually evolving. And so the Summit organization will continue to evolve, bring disruptive ideas forward, just as Dr. Harrison had wanted us to do, to fulfill those objectives, to be the leader in MASH research, continue to explore new therapeutic areas where we can impact research design and execution of clinical trials and bring quality data and ultimately therapeutics to patients who are in need of them.
Well, thank you very much, Gail, for speaking with us today. We really appreciate your time and insights.
Thank you for having me.
We look forward to learning more about Summit Clinical Research's work in hepatology. Thank you all for joining us for this Xtalks Spotlight feature.